The empire of Akkad, forged by Sargon and brought to its zenith under Naram-Sin, seemed invincible. For decades, its armies marched across deserts, mountains and river plains. Its rulers claimed divine authority, and its bureaucracy maintained order over vast territories. Yet, as with all great civilizations, the forces of time, nature, and human ambition began to test its strength. The seeds of decline were planted long before the city vanished beneath the sands. Even during Naram-Sin's reign, signs of instability appeared. Border regions, distant from the capital, were difficult to control. Governors, though loyal, struggled to enforce authority over restless populations. Trade routes, lifelines of wealth and grain, were vulnerable to disruption. Rivals from neighboring lands, particularly the Gudians, a confederation of mountain tribes from the Zagros, remained a persistent threat. But beyond political challenges, nature itself began to conspire against Akkad. Studies of ancient sediment layers and pollen deposits suggest that Mesopotamia experienced a prolonged drought around 2200 BCE. Rivers, which had sustained agriculture and cities for millennia, shrank during critical periods. Crops failed. Food shortages spread from rural areas to the capital. An empire built on surplus and organization found itself vulnerable when the land could no longer provide. The Gudians appear in Mesopotamian texts as mysterious, almost mythical enemies, mountain people from the east who seemed immune to the cultural and military influence of Akkad. Ancient scribes described them as barbarians, perhaps exaggerating their foreignness, but their impact was real. They exploited the weakening empire, launching raids on cities and cutting off trade. It is unclear whether the Gudians directly caused Akkad's collapse or merely accelerated it. Some texts suggest they eventually captured and ruled over the empire, though in a fragmented and chaotic form. They may have been both conquerors and symbols of the empire's vulnerability, representing the fact that even the mightiest civilizations can be undone when governance and environment falter simultaneously. As Akkad weakened, political unity unraveled. Governors and local elites began asserting independence. Revolts erupted in southern cities that had once been loyal to Sargon and Naram-Sin. The administrative machinery, which had functioned flawlessly at the empire's peak, began to fail. Without strong central leadership, communication faltered, trade slowed, and the economy deteriorated. The very system that had allowed Akkad to dominate Mesopotamia now became fragile. The ancient Sumerians attributed Akkad's fall to divine wrath. Texts such as the Curse of Akkad recount that Naram-Sin's pride angered the gods, who unleashed storms, famine, and plagues upon the empire. While modern historians recognize these as mythologized interpretations, they reflect a deeply human attempt to explain disaster. They capture the sense of awe and fear that surrounded Akkad's collapse, illustrating that even contemporaries saw the empire's decline as catastrophic and unprecedented. The myths emphasize that Akkad did not merely fall, it vanished as if erased by divine will. This narrative continues to fascinate scholars and storytellers alike, because it suggests a scale of destruction almost unimaginable for its time. Archaeological evidence supports the idea that environmental stress contributed to Akkad's collapse. Core samples from the Tigris and Euphrates floodplains indicate severe reductions in rainfall and river flow during the late 3rd millennium BCE. Irrigation canals silted up or dried completely. Agricultural output plummeted. Cities dependent on these river systems could no longer sustain large populations. Famine likely forced migrations, depopulating urban centers. Cities weakened by environmental pressures were vulnerable to both internal rebellion and external invasion. Akkad's fall was thus not solely the result of war or poor governance, it was a perfect storm of natural and human factors. By the time the Gudians exerted their influence over the region, Akkad's grandeur had already begun to fade. Clay tablets from the period hint at political chaos, officials recording decrees without signatures, cities defaulting on taxes, temples left unattended. The once thriving capital may have been partially abandoned, its monuments deteriorating, its streets silent. We can imagine Akkad at this time, a city that had once bustled with trade, festivals, and religious ceremonies, now seeing reduced populations and empty marketplaces. Soldiers marched, but with dwindling numbers and uncertain loyalty. Governors struggled to assert authority, and the divine mandate that had once legitimized the king seemed distant and unattainable. Even so, the empire's influence lingered. Akkadian language and culture continued to shape the region, even as political control crumbled. The innovations in administration, law, and military organization survived in successor states. The city of Akkad itself, however, began to vanish, swallowed by time and environmental change. Unlike other Mesopotamian cities, Akkad left almost no trace. While other Mesopotamian cities survived through ruins that archaeologists could study, Akkad's precise location remains unknown. Scholars debate whether it was buried beneath centuries of sediment, destroyed by floods, or simply abandoned and reclaimed by the plain. Some suggest that the very materials used to build Akkad, mud, brick and reed, contributed to its disappearance. Unlike stone construction, the sun-backed mud bricks dissolves and erodes if not maintained. Centuries of abandonment could have erased the city entirely. Rivers shifted, deserts encroached, and the once mighty capital melted back into the land from which it arose. It is this combination of environmental catastrophe, political instability, and invasions that makes Akkad unique, an empire at the height of human achievement that vanished almost without a trace. The fall of Akkad is not just a story of lost kings and armies, it is a narrative of the fragility of human achievement, a cautionary tale about the limits of power and the inevitability of change. The empire that once commanded the world left a legacy not in stone, but in ideas, governance, administration, literature, and cultural integration, that would echo for millennia. Long after the rivers swallowed its streets and the mud brick walls collapsed, Akkad lived on, not in stone, but in story. Its disappearance sparked a wave of myths, poems, and curses that echoed across Mesopotamia, transforming the city from a historical reality into a legendary symbol of human ambition, divine favor, and cosmic punishment. Perhaps the most famous myth surrounding Akkad is the Curse of Akkad. This ancient Sumerian text, written centuries after the city's decline, portrays the empire's collapse as the wrath of the gods rather than the result of political mismanagement or environmental hardship. According to the legend, Naram-Sin, grandson of Sargon, arrogantly declared himself divine. His hubris, the myth claims, angered the gods, prompting a storm of devastation that swept across the land, toppling Akkad and scattering its people. The language is vivid, rivers turned to blood, crops failed, and invaders struck as instruments of divine justice. While modern archaeology suggests a combination of environmental stress and political instability caused Akkad's fall, the myth captures a deeper truth. The empire's sudden disappearance was shocking enough to be interpreted as supernatural intervention. This legend served multiple purposes. It explained the unexplainable, reinforced the moral authority of the gods, and offered a cautionary tale about pride and power. In a world where rulers claimed divine favor, the story of Akkad became a warning. Even the greatest kings are mortal, and even the mightiest cities can vanish under divine scrutiny. Religion was central to Akkad's identity, both in life and in legend. The city's rulers claimed the backing of multiple gods, Ishtar for love and war, Nana for wisdom, and Enlil for authority. Under Naram-Sin, kingship itself became divine, blurring the line between human ruler and god. After Akkad's fall, myths emphasized this divine connection in reverse. the gods were no longer protectors but agents of punishment. Stories describe gods withdrawing their favor, leaving the city vulnerable to famine, invasion, and collapse. Temples became silent, rituals ceased, and divine power, once the foundation of the empire, was portrayed as turning against it. Through these myths, Akkad was immortalized not just as a city, but as a cautionary paradigm, a civilization so ambitious that it drew the gaze, and ire, of the gods themselves. Naram-Sin became the central figure in Akkad's legendary memory. In life, he had claimed divinity; in myth, he became the archetype of the proud ruler undone by his own arrogance. Tales describe him standing tall, horned helmet gleaming, trampling enemies, yet ultimately powerless before the forces of nature and fate. The victory stele of Naram-Sin, discovered in modern Iraq, reflects this duality. It celebrates conquest and divine endorsement, yet centuries later, the mythologized narrative emphasizes downfall. Naram-Sin's story demonstrates the interplay of history and legend, how memory transforms political events into enduring moral and cosmic lessons. Akkad's disappearance fueled imaginations far beyond its borders. Sumerian, Babylonian, and later Assyrian scribes wrote about the city's grandeur and its sudden erasure. Some tales describe the streets vanishing under floodwaters or sandstorms, while others speak of entire populations being carried away by divine will. Unlike Babylon, Akkad left no monumental ruins to anchor memory. Its existence was preserved in the minds of scribes, transmitted through tablets and oral tradition. This absence created a sense of mystery that has persisted for millennia. To Mesopotamians, Akkad became more than a historical city; it became a symbol of impermanence and cosmic judgment. Though myth and history are intertwined, the legends of Akkad provide valuable insights. They reveal contemporary perceptions of kingship, divine authority, and the consequences of hubris. They illustrate how societies process disaster. When events defy understanding, humans turn to narrative, embedding moral, religious, and social lessons within stories. By studying these myths alongside archaeological evidence, historians can reconstruct both the material and cultural dimensions of Akkad's world. The interplay between legend and fact allows us to glimpse the human experience behind the empire, the fears, hopes, and ambitions of those who lived through its rise and fall. Even today, Akkad captivates scholars and storytellers alike. Its capital remains unlocated, its streets unexcavated, and its buildings unstudied. Yet the city thrives in legend, representing the possibilities and vulnerabilities of human civilization. Every reference to Akkad, whether a clay tablet, a myth, or a scholarly debate, is a thread connecting modern observers to a vanished world. The city's story challenges assumptions about permanence, reminding us that power, prosperity, and human achievement are always at the mercy of time, environment, and fate. Akkad's influence extended far beyond its physical existence. Its administrative innovations, cultural synthesis, and imperial ambitions laid the groundwork for later empires, including Babylon and Assyria. Its myths shaped literature and moral thought for generations. The lessons embedded in the legend of Akkad, hubris, divine oversight, and impermanence, resonate through human history, reminding us that the greatest achievements are never guaranteed to endure. Even without its walls, temples, or streets, Akkad lives, not in ruins, but in the human imagination, in clay tablets, and in the enduring power of story. Its disappearance does not diminish its impact, it magnifies it, transforming Akkad into a symbol of ambition, vulnerability, and the eternal tension between humans and the forces that shape their destiny. Unlike other cities of Mesopotamia, Akkad has left almost no trace, no visible walls, no monumental ziggurats, no streets to map. For archaeologists, this is both a challenge and a fascination. How do you search for a city that time seems determined to erase? And why has this ancient capital, once the heart of the world's first empire, remained hidden for over 4 millennia? In the 19th and early 20th centuries, European archaeologists arrived in Mesopotamia with shovels, maps, and unbridled curiosity. They uncovered the ruins of Ur, Babylon, and Uruk, piecing together the histories of Sumer, Akkad's neighbors. Akkad, however, remained elusive. Some explorers believed they had found clues near modern Baghdad. Others investigated Ishan Mizyad, hoping that layers of ancient mud brick might reveal the lost city. Each site offered tantalizing hints: clay tablets with inscriptions mentioning Akkad, pottery fragments that could have belonged to the Akkadian period, or canal remnants that suggested a major settlement. Yet no definitive proof emerged. Akkad seemed to vanish as quickly as it had risen. Since Akkad left few ruins, scholars turned to texts. Sumerian and Akkadian tablets mention Akkad, Sargon's capital, describing its location in relation to rivers and neighboring cities. These references, however, are frustratingly vague. Phrases like between the Tigris and the Euphrates or near Subartu provide general directions but no coordinates. Some researchers attempt to triangulate Akkad's location using economic and military texts, examining trade routes, grain shipments, and army movements. These reconstructions suggest a city somewhere near the confluence of the Tigris and Euphrates, north of Babylon, but the exact site remains a mystery. In recent decades, technology has transformed the search. Satellite imagery, ground-penetrating radar, and geomorphological studies allow archaeologists to detect buried settlements without traditional excavation. Ancient river channels, mapped through satellite data, suggest areas where Akkad could have thrived. High-resolution scans reveal mounds that may conceal the remains of mud brick buildings. Yet even with these tools, Akkad hides. The shifting courses of the Tigris and Euphrates, centuries of flooding, and layers of silt have buried potential sites under meters of sediment. The very rivers that sustained Akkad may have also swallowed it. Multiple theories compete in academic circles. Some scholars propose Akkad was close to modern Baghdad, where alluvial plains could support a large capital. Tablets referencing trade and agriculture in the region support this hypothesis. Some suggest that Akkad was built along a river channel that no longer exists, hidden beneath centuries of sediment. Flooding and environmental shifts may have made the site unrecognizable. Some argue Akkad might lie north of the Diyala River, strategically placed to control both Mesopotamian plains and Zagros trade routes. While a radical theory posits that Akkad was abandoned and its mud brick walls were dismantled for reuse elsewhere, leaving no discernible archaeological footprint. Despite decades of excavation and research, Akkad's location remains unconfirmed, a mystery that has fascinated archaeologists, historians, and adventurers for generations. The absence of ruins has fueled speculation and imagination. Artists, writers, and filmmakers often depict Akkad as a vast city of golden temples, bustling streets, and monumental ziggurats. While these images are speculative, they are rooted in what we know. Sargon's empire was unprecedented, and its capital likely reflected the power and ambition of its rulers. Archaeology, in this sense, becomes a dialogue between evidence and imagination. Every fragment of clay, every mention in a tablet, and every potential mound tells a story. Even if Akkad remains undiscovered, its cultural and historical significance persists, inspiring inquiry and wonder. The hunt for Akkad is not merely about finding bricks and walls. It is about understanding early empire building, human ingenuity, and the fragility of civilizations. Each failed expedition, each inconclusive tablet, underscores a paradox. Akkad shaped the world, yet its physical remains are almost invisible. Modern archaeology continues to refine methods, using technology to peer beneath the surface of Mesopotamia's floodplains. Even if the city remains hidden for decades or centuries more, the pursuit itself reveals much about how empires function, how cities grow and decline, and how memory can outlast material existence. Akkad's disappearance also poses philosophical questions. Can the mightiest city vanish completely, leaving only stories and inscriptions as proof of its existence? And what does it mean for human history when the evidence of empire is lost to time? The city's absence forces historians to rely on texts, myths, and indirect evidence, blending historical scholarship with interpretive imagination. In a sense, Akkad has become a symbol, not just of a lost empire, but of the limits of human knowledge and the persistence of memory. For now, Akkad remains a ghost in the landscape of history, a city that exists vividly in memory and myth, yet eludes physical discovery. Its story reminds us that human civilization can achieve remarkable heights, yet still be erased by time, environment, and fate. Even as Akkad disappeared from the map, its story reverberated across history. The city and its empire, though lost to time, left a profound imprint on Mesopotamia and the civilizations that followed. From literature to governance, from art to imperial ideology, the shadow of Akkad stretched far beyond its brief existence, shaping human culture for millennia. One of Akkad's most enduring contributions lies in literature. Sargon's dynasty produced some of the earliest known authors, most notably Enheduanna, daughter of Sargon and high priestess of the moon god Nanna in Ur. Her hymns, prayers, and poetic compositions are among the first works in history to carry a named author, marking a revolution in human self-expression. Enheduanna's writings not only celebrated Akkad's rulers but also blended religious devotion with political propaganda. They reinforced the connection between king and deity, providing moral and spiritual justification for imperial rule. Her works were copied and referenced for centuries, influencing Babylonian and Assyrian literature and serving as templates for later literary traditions. Other texts, like the Curse of Akkad, further embedded the city in the literary imagination. Tales of divine retribution, lost glory, and hubris became cautionary stories that transcended their time. Akkad, though physically gone, lived in the minds of scribes, poets, and storytellers who used its legend to convey lessons about power, pride, and fate. Akkad also left a cultural imprint that shaped Mesopotamia for generations. The empire's synthesis of Sumerian and Akkadian traditions created a shared identity that persisted even after political collapse. Religious practices, artistic styles, and administrative language spread across the region, standardizing aspects of culture that would be used by Babylonian and Assyrian empires centuries later. The deification of kings, popularized by Naram-Sin, influenced the ideology of later rulers. The concept that a monarch could possess divine authority became a cornerstone of Mesopotamian governance, providing legitimacy and control over large, diverse populations. In art and iconography, motifs developed in Akkad, such as the horned crown, military triumphs, and monumental reliefs, were echoed in subsequent empires. Akkad's innovations in governance left a legacy that persisted long after its fall. Sargon's systems of appointed governors, standardized weights and measures, taxation, and record-keeping were models for later empires. The concept of centralized administration over vast territories became a blueprint for Babylon, Assyria, and even distant civilizations outside Mesopotamia. The city-state model was replaced by the empire model, a ruler capable of unifying diverse peoples under law, religion, and administration. Akkad demonstrated that it was possible to govern a large territory efficiently, leaving lessons that resonate in political thought to this day. Akkad's story became a symbol for later civilizations. Babylonian kings invoked Sargon and Naram-Sin in inscriptions, connecting themselves to a legendary past. The Akkadian language, standardized during the empire's peak, became the lingua franca of diplomacy and administration for centuries. Art, literature, and ideology from Akkad informed the creation of subsequent states. Monumental architecture, such as ziggurats and city layouts, borrowed inspiration from the idea of a centralized capital. Military organization, imperial propaganda, and religious authority, all refined in Akkad, set precedents that shaped Mesopotamian and Near Eastern history for over 1,000 years. Ironically, Akkad's disappearance amplified its influence. The mystery of a city that vanished entirely from the landscape fascinated scribes, historians, and storytellers. It became a symbol of impermanence, a reminder that human achievement, no matter how grand, is always vulnerable to time, environment, and fate. Legends of Akkad's sudden disappearance, paired with its literary and administrative achievements, created a unique cultural memory. The city became a canvas for moral, religious, and philosophical reflection. Writers and scholars could explore ideas of hubris, divine will, and societal fragility using Akkad as a historical and symbolic case study. In the modern era, Akkad continues to captivate historians, archaeologists, and the public imagination. Despite the lack of confirmed ruins, the city has inspired novels, films, documentaries, and academic research. Its story, a mix of human ambition, divine drama, and environmental catastrophe, resonates universally. Modern scholars use Akkad as a lens to understand the dynamics of early empires, how they rise, sustain themselves, and collapse. It serves as a reminder that power is temporary, and that civilizations, no matter how advanced, are part of the larger rhythms of nature and human society. Ultimately, Akkad's influence is not measured by ruins or artifacts alone. It is measured by the ideas it produced, the systems it innovated, and the stories it inspired. The empire's memory transcends material evidence, proving that human culture can outlast physical structures. From Enheduanna's hymns to Naram Sin's stele, from administrative tablets to myths of divine punishment, Akkad continues to echo through history. Its lessons, warnings, and achievements resonate across millennia, reminding us that even when the earth reclaims a city, human imagination preserves its spirit. Akkad does not exist on the map. Its streets, temples, and walls have vanished beneath millennia of shifting rivers, floods, and sands. Yet the city endures, not in stone, but in story, memory, and imagination. The empire that once commanded the ancient world has become a timeless symbol of ambition, innovation, vulnerability, and mystery. As we conclude our journey, we confront the questions that have haunted scholars, archaeologists, and storytellers for centuries. What made Akkad rise so high, and why did it fall so completely? And what lessons does its story hold for humanity today? The city's disappearance is unparalleled in the ancient world. Akkad's rise illustrates the extraordinary capacity of human ambition. Sargon, the empire's founder, united fractured city-states, forged the first known empire, and established administrative, military, and economic systems that would influence generations. His grandson, Naram Sin, extended this vision to unprecedented heights, claiming divine kingship and projecting authority across deserts and rivers. These achievements were not only political, they were cultural. Akkad pioneered literature with Enheduanna's hymns, codified religious integration, and disseminated art and iconography across its territories. It demonstrated that human creativity, organization, and vision could transform a city into an empire, a civilization into legend. Yet Akkad also teaches the fragility of power. Environmental changes, drought, river shifts, and agricultural stress expose the vulnerabilities of even the most sophisticated administration. Political instability, rebellions, and external invasions compounded these pressures. The empire's collapse reminds us that no civilization, no matter how mighty, is immune to natural forces or internal decay. Akkad's story is a cautionary tale. Wealth, technology, and armies may sustain power temporarily, but they cannot prevent the inexorable impact of environment, time, and human ambition. Akkad's legends deepen its lesson. The curse of Akkad and other myths depict divine punishment for hubris, emphasizing the moral and spiritual dimensions of leadership. Naram Sin's story, with its mix of triumph and downfall, illustrates the double-edged nature of power. These myths also highlight the role of narrative in preserving memory. Even when physical evidence disappears, stories endure. Akkad's legacy proves that civilizations live not only through bricks and walls but also through ideas, culture, and imagination. It reminds us that human memory, encoded in myths, texts, and art, can outlast even the most monumental architecture. In the modern era, Akkad's story resonates in new ways. Cities rise and fall, economies flourish and collapse, and societies confront environmental crises. Historians and policymakers can draw lessons from Akkad: the importance of sustainable governance, the necessity of resilience in the face of environmental stress, and the value of cultural cohesion in diverse empires. Akkad also inspires curiosity and scientific inquiry. Archaeologists continue to search for its remains using satellite imagery, ground-penetrating radar, and geomorphological studies. Every failed expedition, every fragmentary tablet, reinforces the allure of discovery and the thrill of connecting with humanity's ancient past. Akkad transcends its time, offering insights not only into Mesopotamia but also into the human condition itself. Akkad's true empire may not have been its walls, markets, or temples, but its ideas. Administrative innovations influenced Babylon and Assyria. Religious integration shaped subsequent beliefs. Literature and art inspired generations. And its legends provided a moral and philosophical framework that endured for millennia. In this sense, Akkad is eternal. Its story, woven from history, myth, and imagination, remains alive, challenging and inspiring those who encounter it. Though we may never walk its streets or stand within its temples, the city lives in our curiosity, our scholarship, and our storytelling. Ultimately, Akkad embodies the paradox of human civilization: immense power yet profound vulnerability, material impermanence yet cultural immortality. It represents the heights humanity can reach and the forces that can undo even the mightiest achievements. Its disappearance teaches humility, and its legacy teaches aspiration. For historians, archaeologists, and dreamers alike, Akkad remains a symbol of what was possible and a reminder that even when the physical world vanishes, human memory and imagination can preserve greatness indefinitely. As we leave Akkad behind, the questions endure: will modern archaeology ever locate the city? Can Akkad's lessons inform our response to environmental and political challenges today? How do we preserve the legacies of our own civilizations for future generations? And, ultimately, what does it mean for humanity that the echoes of a city that vanished millennia ago still captivate the world? Akkad is gone, yet it is everywhere, in history books, myths, and the human imagination. Its story is a bridge between past and present, reminding us that the rise and fall of empires is not merely a tale of power, but a profound reflection on civilization itself.